Hello everybody. So this is going to be me laying out a full build sequence with the fragments and the exotics and recommended grenades for each class with the prismatic layout that we'll have access to in the beginning of Final Shape. And then real quickly, I wanted to give a shout out to Core Projects because they made the infographics that you'll see up on the screen throughout the video, and they were just a really good, helpful tool for while I've tried to organize my thoughts for the video. So to go ahead and jump into it, we'll start with the Warlock. What we're looking at is going to be using Felwinter's Helm with Lightning Surge and Feed the Void for the aspects. We'll use, you can kind of have your option of grenade that you want there, but I think Cold Snap or Vortex will be the recommended grenades to use, just because Cold Snap will give you the ability to control the battlefield, freeze targets, you'll get a little bit of extra damage from shattering the opponents. And then Vortex Grenade will let you be able to pull everybody into one area, so that way you kind of clump them up together for when you're doing your Lightning Surge. For the melee, we'll use Arcane Needle. That will let us have 3 charges for Lightning Surge, and then we can throw out one, unravel a bunch of enemies, and then also, as long as we have 1 or 2 charges, our extra charge will recharge faster. And that's just how it works with all the classes when you have multiple charges. Our class ability, we're just going to go with Phoenix Dive because that will give us a shorter cooldown and it will give us a faster animation for when we need to pop cure, although we probably won't really even have to pop cure that often because Feed the Void will be healing us every time we get kills. And then lastly, we're going to take advantage of Song of Flame or Needle Storm for the super. This is mainly just going to interact with our getting finishers, and we're going to take one of the fragments that will do a different elemental effect based off whatever your super is. So while we're on the subject of fragments, let's go ahead and take a look at that. So this is where we're going to have a lot of different synergies with how the build is going to end up running. One of the fragments we're going to take is going to be Facet of Balance, and what that will do is, based off of us getting rapid light kills, we'll get melee energy, and if we hit rapid dark kills, we will get grenade energy. We're already going to be getting a bunch of grenade energy from Feed the Void in the kills, and then our Lightning Surge is going to proc the part where it gives us more melee energy, so it'll just increase how often we have our melee up. So with the fact that we will be in the middle of a bunch of enemies as well, we're going to get Facet of Protection. What that will do is it will give us increased damage reduction while we are surrounded by enemies, and if we are in Transcendence, we will get increased damage reduction. And in line with us getting finishers, we're going to pick up Facet of Defiance, and what that will do is, based off whatever our super is, whenever we finish an enemy, we will generate an elemental effect around them. So that will give us our Jolt or Sever, basically whatever your super you go with, you will do an elemental effect around there, and that's just an extra added effect that we're going to have on top of the weaken and the disorient that we're doing with Felwinter's Helm. So if we're running Needle Storm, then also this will help separately with our next facet, which is going to be Facet of Courage, which is basically whenever an enemy is affected by a dark debuff, they are going to take increased damage from light abilities. So that means we'll be doing extra damage with our Lightning Surge, and it will just improve how much synergy we have within the build. Next, we will be taking Facet of Sacrifice, and what that will do is, while we have a light buff, like Devour, ability kills will generate bonus Dark Transcendence energy. So that just lets us get to Transcendence easier, even though we're primarily using our light ability of Lightning Surge to get the kills. We'll still be generating Dark energy at the same time. Looking at the artifact, I'm primarily going to focus on the last 2 columns because they are the ones that have the major part of the build synergy with this one. And so we're going to look at Void Hegemony, which is whenever we kill a target that is weakened while we have a Void or a Prismatic subclass equipped, we will get a Void Overshield. And then Galvanic Armor, which is whenever we are on a Arc or Prismatic subclass, we take reduced damage while we're amplified. And with Lightning Surge, we will constantly have Amplify up from the jolted targets dying. And then with Felwinter's Helm, we'll constantly be weakening targets, so our kills there will be able to give us that Void Overshield. And the Void Overshield will be very important because it will interact with the perk on the last column that is going to be the main one I focus around, which is going to be Shield Crush, and that's going to be whenever you have Woven Mail, Void Overshield, or Frost Armor, you will get increased melee recharge and increased melee damage. And then whenever you have Radiant or Amplify, you will get increased grenade recharge and increased grenade damage. The grenade damage isn't as important. The main part that we're going to be building around is the fact that we're getting increased melee recharge and increased melee damage from that Shield Crush. And for this next build, we're going to focus around the Getaway Artist exotic. That is the Warlock Glove, that whenever you consume an Arc Grenade, it will give you an enhanced Arc Soul, and whenever that Arc Soul hits a target, it will give you recharge on your grenade. And so shout out to Maven and Aztec Cross. They went to that Bungie preview and they were able to show us that this interaction does work before we get access to Final Shape. And so I can go ahead and give you this build here. So the aspects we're going to build around are going to be Feed the Voids and Hellion. And so this is going to be a very auto damage based setup. That way we're able to consistently have a lot of uptime on our class ability and our grenade. The melee that we'll build around is going to be Arcane Needle, the reason being that we just get multiple charges, so it lets us very easily distribute that dark debuff around the field, and we don't have to worry about the uptime on it. The class ability will be the Phoenix Dive, because we will have a quicker animation to activate it, and we'll have a quicker recharge from the ability. And then the super, I'm leaning towards Needle Storm still, because I just like that, but I think Song of Flame is going to be very strong, and realistically, again, it's going to be a very background part of the build here, so you can go with whichever one. Looking at the fragments, we're going to use Facet of Balance, because whenever we get rapid light kills, we will get increased melee recharge, and whenever we get dark kills, we will get increased grenade recharge. We're not very worried about the grenade recharge because we have Feed the Void active here. We have Arc Soul from the Getaway Artist giving us our grenade energy back. And so that's going to be more like, as long as you're getting kills with your abilities there, you'll be perfectly fine regardless of that. And because they're all light abilities, you'll be able to get more Arcane Needles out. And because we have so much auto damage going out, that means that we're not worried about the uptime of our melee. The next fragment we will be using here will be Facet of Hope. What that will do is that as long as we have an elemental buff like Devour or Amplify from the Getaway Artist, we will have increased recharge on our class ability. That will just make it easier to keep Hellion up, so that way we have that auto damage going out consistently. The next fragment we'll want to have equipped will be Facet of Courage, and what that will do is as long as we have a darkness debuff applied on an enemy, they will take increased damage from light abilities. So, and again, because we have the auto damage coming out from the Arc Soul and from the Hellion, as long as we have Unravel applied onto an enemy, they will take more damage from those effects, which will make sure that we're able to keep the Devour procced, and which will help us to keep the build going and flowing properly. The next fragment we'll look at will be Facet of Sacrifice, and what that will do is as long as we have a light buff active, kills with our abilities will generate dark transcendent energy, and that's regardless of whatever ability it is. So even if it's our Arc Soul and our Hellion, we'll still be making bonus dark transcendent energy, and that will help us get to transcendence even faster. The next one's pretty straightforward. It's just going to be Facet Protection, and that's just while we are surrounded by enemies, we will take reduced damage, and then when we're in Transcendence, we'll take even more reduced damage. Looking at the artifact, the main one that's going to be relevant to us is going to be Galvanic Armor. What that will do is while we have an Arc or Prismatic subclass equipped, while we're amplified, we take reduced damage. And because we have Getaway Artists and we're going to be eating our grenade to get that Arc Soul, we're constantly going to have Amplify up. The other one's going to be Shield Crush, and it's just going to give us extra recharge because whenever we are amplified or radiant, we will have increased grenade recharge and grenade damage. And then while we have the Void over Shield, Woven Mail, or Frost Armor, we will have increased melee recharge or melee damage, but we're not going to have any of those effects in this build for that part. Now looking at the Hunter, the first build we're looking at is going to be based around a Fadia Spade. What that will do is it will give us an additional charge Phantom Knives, and whenever we recharge one active charge of Phantom Knives, we will get both charges back. Then the other nice part about it is that whenever we get a kill with Phantom Knives, we will also get a damage increase on how much damage it does. And this will pair nicely with how we're going to lay out the build. Looking at the aspects, we're going to have Stylus Executioner, and what that will do is whenever we get a kill on an enemy who has an elemental debuff on them, we will go invisible, and then our next melee will weaken targets. And then the other one we'll take is going to be Winter Shroud, and what that will do is whenever we do our dodge roll, we will slow targets around us, and slowing enemies will also give us an additional cooldown on our class ability. The melee will be Knife Trick, And the grenade here, I'm leaning towards just going with the grapple grenade. That way we're able to get some extra mobility around the battlefield, and then we're also able to spread unravel around the field as well. For the super, this is going to be one again where you're able to kind of do whatever you want to for the super because it's not as meaningful to the build here. Golden Gun will be very good for damage and generating orbs for your teammates. And Shadow Shot will also be very nice for controlling the battlefield and just kind of being able to keep an area locked down pretty consistently. Fragment wise, we will be going with Faceted Balance. What that will do is as we get rapid light kills, we will generate melee energy, and as we get rapid dark kills, we will generate grenade energy. And those will work pretty nicely. Like I said, we'll really have a lot of uptime already with our melee from just the Gambler's Dodge being able to give us both charges back, but this will help us to be able to keep that flow going. The next fragment we'll take will be Faceted Dawn. What that will do is when we get powered melee hits, it will cause us to be radiant. And when we get powered melee kills, it will cause our nearby allies to be radiant. And that's just going to help us with the next fragment we're going to be looking at, which is going to be Facet of Hope. And what that will do is whenever we have an elemental buff, we will get increased class ability recharge. So those two work together to make sure that we have Radiant active all the time, and then by being Radiant, we will be able to have increased class ability recharge on top of the increased class ability recharge from Winter Shroud. Our next fragment is going to be Facet of Courage, and what that will do is whenever we have targets that are afflicted by a darkness debuff, they will take increased damage from light abilities. So that will let our Knife Trick do extra damage, and it will just help us to be able to make sure we're putting down targets or at least doing that extra burst of damage to them. Last one we'll take here, a Facet of Sacrifice. And what that will do is while you have a light buff, your ability kills will generate bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. For the artifact, we're not going to go over anything that's like weapon synergy here. We're just looking at the pure ability synergies and the verb synergies. So for this one, because we will be weakening targets with Stylus Executioner, we will take Void Hegemony, and that will give us the Void over Shield whenever we kill an enemy who is weakened, while we have a Void or Prismatic subclass equipped. And then the main one that's on this artifact that we're going to build around is again going to be Shield Crush. And what that will do is while we have a Void over Shield, Woven Mail, or Frost Armor, we will get increased melee recharge and increased melee damage. And then while we are Amplified or Radiant, we will have increased grenade cooldown and we will have increased grenade damage. And because we're using grapple melee, it should benefit from both the grenade damage increase and the melee damage increase. And then our Knife Trick is just going to do a bunch of damage from getting that increased melee damage. Next build will be based around a reworked exotic. It's going to be based around Renewal Grass. And so what Renewal Grass does is it increases your Dustfield grenade radius by 25%. And when you enter the slow field of the Dustfield, you will now gain stacks of Frost Armor. And that's for both you and your allies. So obviously our main grenade that we're going to be building around here is going to be Dustfield. The aspects are going to be Gunpowder Gamble and Ascension. And what Gunpowder Gamble does is whenever you get an ability kill on Prismatic, you will be able to gain a charge towards Gunpowder Gamble. I believe it's 5 charges. Once you get a full stack of that, you will get a special grenade. You can throw the grenade out and you're able to either shoot it or let it blow up on its own, and it will do ignition damage to the enemies in the area around there. The Ascension aspect will make it where when you're in midair, you can use your class ability. That will give you a boost in height, and it will jolt targets underneath you, and it will give you Amplified. Melee will be Combination Blow, and the reason why is because this build is going to be very focused in throwing your Dustfield, freezing targets, meleeing them with Combination Blow, getting your Ascension to jolt the targets, getting your Gunpowder Gamble to throw in the middle of the frozen targets, blow them up, and just kind of cycling around through that. You'll be getting a lot of dark and light kills with this build. For the super, we're going to use Shadow Shot, and that's just another control aspect where if our Dustfield's on cooldown and we still want to control the area, we can just shoot out the Shadow Shot real quick, and the targets will be linked. We can throw the Gunpowder Gamble in, we can jolt them, really this will just give us a lot of ability to set targets up for different ways to kill them based off what we need to get Transcendent. For our fragments, we're going to go with Faceted Balance. What that will do is as we're getting rapid light kills, it will generate melee energy, and as we're getting rapid dark kills, it will generate grenade energy. Our next fragment will be Facet of Hope, and what that will do is, as we have elemental buffs like Frost Armor, we will be able to have an increased recharge time on our class ability. The next fragment we'll take will be Facet of Courage, and what that will do is we will do increased damage with our light abilities to targets who are afflicted by dark debuffs. The next fragment will be Facet of Ruin, and what that will do is when we do ignitions, it will have an increased area effect, and when we shatter stasis crystals and frozen targets, it will have an increased area effect and increased damage. The next fragments we will take will be Facet of Awakening, which will be rapid elemental kills or super kills, generate an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. This will pair nicely with our next fragment, which will be Facet of Honor, which is collecting an elemental pickup or destroying a tangle grants transcendence energy of the same type. So with the fact that we will have Gunpowder Gamble igniting targets, we will have Combination Blow, we will have Jolt going off in the area, we will have Shadow Shot, and we will have Stasis explosions going off. We will be generating a lot of elemental pickups, so we should be able to very consistently have our Transcendence up. Looking at the artifact now, we're going to primarily be focused on Galvanic Armor, which will allow us to take reduced damage while we have an Arc or Prismatic subclass equipped and we are amplified. And the other one we'll pick up will be Shield Crush, which is while we have Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or Void Overshield, we will have increased melee damage and increased melee recharge. And then while we are amplified Radiant, we will have increased grenade recharge and increased grenade damage. Okay, moving on to Titan now. So for Titan, the first build that we're going to look at, we're going to be building around the Cadmus Ridge Lance Cap. What that does is it will give us an enhanced Diamond Lance whenever we spawn one, and it will also allow us to put our Rally Barricade down, and when we get precision hits on targets, it will spawn the Diamond Lance right next to us. We're going to be pairing that with the Diamond Lance aspect and Consecration. So the purpose of this build will be to allow you to set up targets for ignitions and melee kills, and consistently having access to the enhanced Diamond Lances, because whenever you throw the enhanced Diamond Lance, it will spawn a Stasis Crystal right behind the target based off of the tier of enemy it is. For the melee, we will be taking Frenzy Blade, and the reason why we're taking this is because it will give us 3 charges, and we can use Consecration with each of those charges. On top of that, we will also be able to regenerate our melee faster if we have a charge stored still, because if you have a stored charge, your second and your third charge regenerate faster. For the grenade, there's not really a grenade option you need to use for this. Suppression works if you want to be able to hit overload champions, but there's no purpose to using any specific grenade. For the class ability, we will be taking the Rally Barricade, and that's for the obvious reason that the Cadmus Ridge Lance Cap will allow us to be able to get precision hits on enemies while we have our Rally Barricade out, and it will spawn the Diamond Lance right next to us. For the super, there's not really any specific super you need here. I would probably run with Twilight Axe, just because it will allow us to throw out the axe and weaken targets. For the fragments, the first one we'll take will be Facet of Dawn, and what that will do is it will allow us to become radiant whenever we hit a target with a powered melee ability, and whenever we kill a target with a powered melee ability, it will make our nearby allies radiant as well. Our next fragment will be Facet of Hope. What this will do is, while we have a elemental buff, we will be able to generate our class ability faster, and that will just let us be able to pretty consistently put down our Rally Barricades as we need to. The next fragment will be Facet of Awakening. Rapid ability kills or super kills generate an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. And we'll pair that with Facet of Honor, which is collecting an elemental pickup or destroying a tangle grants transcendence energy of the same type. So those two will just pair well with the fact that we're going to be throwing out Diamond Lances, we're going to be getting Stasis Shatters, we're going to be getting Consecration kills, and so we'll be able to make sure that we're getting light and dark energy pretty consistently. We'll also take Facet of Protection, and what that does is it will allow us to be able to take reduced damage while we are surrounded by combatants. When we're Transcendent, we will take even more reduced damage while surrounded by combatants. And then our last fragment will be Facet of Ruin, and that increases the size of its solar ignitions and increases the size and damage from destroying stasis crystals or frozen targets. For the artifact, the main one we'll pair up with is going to be on the last column in the Shield Crush, which states while we have Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or Void Overshield, we will gain increased melee recharge and increased melee damage. And then while we are Amplified or Radiant, we will gain increased grenade recharge and increased grenade damage. Mostly it will just help us to be able to kill things with Consecration pretty easily. And now for our last build of the video, we will use the Second Chance Gloves. What those do is it will give us an additional charge of our shield throw. It will also weaken targets that we hit with shield throw, and allow our shield throw to be able to pierce anti-barrier shields. In addition, whenever we do break an anti-barrier shield with the shield throw, it will refund the charge back to us. Now looking at our aspects, we're going to take Knockout, and what that will do is critically wounding a target or breaking their shield infuses your melee attacks with arc energy and increases your melee range and damage for a short time. Also, defeating targets with your melee attacks will start your health regeneration and will also amplify you. The second aspect we'll take will be Dragoner's Lash, and what that does is activating your class ability will send a wave of strand energy that will suspend targets in that path. The grenade we'll take will be Suppression Grenade, and the reason we're going to take that is so that way we're able to stun Overload champions, and then this way our build can hit all 3 champions with just our abilities. The class ability we'll take will be Thruster, and the reason why we're taking that is for the quicker activation and for the quicker cooldown. And the super, we will take Twilight Arsenal, and that's just for the damage, but any of these supers will work for this build. Moving on to our fragments, we will take Facet of Balance, and what that does is Rapid Light Kills will give us increased melee recharge, and Rapid Dark Kills will give us increased grenade cooldown. So the benefit of this is that by us using our shield throw so often, and we'll have the Suspension Grenade, and we'll have Dragoner's Lash on our class ability, we should be able to have our grenade and our melee abilities up pretty often. The next fragment we'll take will be Facet of Hope, and what that does is while we have an elemental buff, we will be able to have increased class ability recharge. The next fragment will be Facet of Protection, and what that does is while we are surrounded by enemies, we will have increased damage reduction, and while we are Transcendent, we will have even more damage reduction. The next one will be Facet of Courage, and what that does is it increases the damage that enemies who are afflicted by Darkness debuff will take from light abilities. This will be beneficial because we'll be suspending targets, which is the Darkness debuff, and then we'll use our shield throw, our light ability, to be able to do even more damage to them. Our last fragment will be Facet of Sacrifice, and what that does is while we have a light buff, ability kills will give us bonus Dark Transcendence energy. And since we're using shield throw primarily to get our kills, that will be the main way that we get Darkness Transcendence energy. And one last time of what our artifact selections will be Galvanic Armor, which is while we are on an Arc or Prismatic subclass. While we're amplified, we will take Reduced Damage. Void Hegemony, which is while we have a Void subclass or Prismatic equipped. Whenever we kill a weakened target, we will get a Void Overshield. And on the last column, we will take Shield Crush, which is while we have Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or Void Overshield, we will deal increased melee damage, and we will have increased melee recharge. While we're Amplified or Radiant, we'll have increased grenade recharge and increased grenade damage. Alright, so those are the 6 builds I'm kind of interested right now, just without having to have hands-on with Prismatic. I think this will be a really good addition to the game, and I'm looking forward to doing more builds and playing around with different options, especially once we get the class items available. Thank you for your time, everybody, and have a good day.